Hi and welcome to Podpadstudios. We're in the workshop today because we're going to address another question. And we've been asked this question before and I can't remember now. Mrs. Breaker will tell me what episode it was. Episode 22 or 20? Episode 20, she's telling me that I talked about some of these things then, but I'm going to talk about them again because I said the main two questions we get asked are what sound systems do you use in your builds and what smoke systems do you use in your builds? So we're going to go over some of the smoke systems and give you some quick demos. So basically you can actually see them being used in the, in the robots, in the projects. There are two types we use. We use a water-based systems and we use oil-based systems. Oil-based systems are used pretty much exclusively outside. Water-based systems pretty much inside, although water systems do work outside, but obviously inside they're far more appropriate. So, oil-based systems will trigger smoke alarms, so they're no good inside. Water-based systems don't trigger smoke alarms because they're not producing any smoke, they're producing water vapour. Pros and cons. Pros and cons, obviously if you're using water-based systems, the water is basically atomised, it turns into a vapour, the vapour looks like a cloud of smoke, but then it turns back into water whenever it touches a surface. So obviously you've got to bear in mind that there can be wetness involved with these things if you're putting them near models and stuff like that. Oil-based systems, obviously you're burning oil, so the oil will produce a residue. Sometimes that residue can get onto surfaces and it's not very nice. Also the oil-based systems smell, but that really depends on the oil, the oil that you use. The water-based systems don't smell at all. So how do they work? So all our water-based systems work on these. Now, it's one I can show you here. These are ultrasonic, I suppose these are actually pond foggers. The idea is that there's an element in here, when you apply voltage to here, the element, excuse me, something in my eye there, the element vibrates and the element then, this is obviously submerged in water, the element vibrates and then it produces this mist of water because it's, I guess the water is atomised or vaporised or however it works. And then there's a switch system on these, so basically if they're dry, they turn off. They come in loads of different guises. You can get 12 volt versions, 24 volt versions, single ceramic element ones, multiple ceramic element ones. So obviously something like that submerged is going to produce a huge amount of vapour. So it needs a much bigger container. Now, once these are submerged, they create like a fog. You need to put them in something. So I build things like this, and they have a, if you like, a little computer fan at the top. And here we've basically got one of these inside here, sits in there like that. You fill it up with water, you turn it on, apply 24 volts DC. I mainly use 24 volt DC ones. And then basically the computer fan turns on, it pushes the air through and it pushes the fog out of the little chimney. And that is basically it for the water-based systems. Now we use these and bigger versions of these on Izzy, on Vikki mainly, and obviously on Vikki there's quite a big unit. So I mean I think we've got some footage of that so I can kind of show you. So obviously you can see that on Vikki and on Izzy. These are the water-based systems. They look really, really good, especially if you add LEDs to them and it lights them up really, really nicely. So that's the water systems. Now on our dragons, as you can see here, our dragons use a different system. Now it's still this water system. We use the water system for obvious reasons. Now if you use smoke, it can be not hot, but there might be a risk of a burn if you're burning oil. Obviously if you're just basically using water, there is no risk. And obviously with our dragons, people get very close to them, they stroke them, so there's no risk involved. And we use these. Now these are very clever little things. These are called nebulizers. They basically run on either 12 volts or even run on a 9 volt battery, to be perfectly honest. And all you do is you fill up this little container with a tiny amount of water and basically press the on button. Obviously it's got to have power connected to it. And you get a decent stream, as you saw in the dragons, of smoke. And that's what produces the smoke for the nostrils on the dragons. They're automatic, so they'll run for about 20 minutes on low power and on about 15 minutes on a higher power. That simply means they produce. So the beauty of these things is there's never a risk for them running dry, which means they won't burn out. Any of these things, if they run dry, and for any reason the switch fails, it can be quite catastrophic. They can literally burn and burn out, and when they burn out, they smell pretty bad. I've obviously had to modify these. These, you can pick these up on eBay, Amazon, places like that. I've modified these because I've added a switch system to it. This is a physical switch, but basically what it means is I can add physical switch, I can add an RF switch, I can add a radio control switch, I can add any sort of switch I want to control this remotely, wired remote. So these are really good. I use these on some of the droids as well. The other thing about these, something I didn't mention about this, is you can't tilt this over for pretty obvious reasons. It's full of water. So they have to remain pretty much upright. And also the fan in here, if it was knocked over, if this fan gets contaminated with water, it's just going to burn out and stop working. These have got a much better angle. So these can actually work at an angle without causing any problems at all. Still have to be upright, but you know, you've got more flexibility in that. Anyway, that is the water-based systems. Now the oil-based systems, mainly used on the 1/6 scale models. And pretty much everybody in the universe that makes, whether it's 1/6 scale models or 1/14, or basically if you've got a tank and you want smoke coming from a model tank, you use one of these. Now, I'll give you a quick demo. You can see this working, actually, well, you can see this working on quite a few of our models here. So this is an oil-based system. So it's in 3 parts. I'll try and hold this up so you can actually see, but it's hard to see. But this bit here is the oil container. And I'll talk about what oil I use in a moment. That's the oil container. That's where the oil goes. This is the little pump or a fan. And here's the control board. Now, the reason there's a control board is because if we just applied power to this, it would run all the time. You just get smoke coming out all the time. That might be a good thing, might be a bad thing, I don't know. The control board allows you to plug it into your RC radio control receiver via this little socket here. And what that then does, it makes this variable. So if you increase for example, the throttle, it would increase the amount of smoke. Or if you decrease the throttle, it would decrease the amount of smoke. Pretty simple, very basic, simple things. They're very reliable. All metal containers, these. And as I said, most people use these for little smoking systems on small models. Oil, you can choose whatever oil you want to put in these. There isn't really, you know, some people will swear by certain oils. That is literally baby oil. I've put in that. So the way it works is you undo the screws from here. There's a heating element. It basically sits in cotton wool. So there's cotton wool, which is saturated with the baby oil. The heating element sits in that. The heating element heats up and it burns the baby oil off, which then comes out of the tube as smoke. Obviously, with all of these, the smoke is white. You ain't going to get black smoke. Anybody that can work out how to get black smoke from one of these, let me know, because, yeah, you can't. So that's those. Very, very simple, very easy to do. 12 volts in the model. Very, very simple. If you want even more smoke than you saw, we can go for the smoke screen effect. Now, I use these. So this is the Lensgo unit. This is really good. This is they're both of these smoke units are both 40 watts. They run on internal batteries, run for about 3 to 4 hours. You know, I mean, the majority of this is just battery. USB charging. So at the bottom, you just plug it in and it charges. And they do, you know, they do run for quite a while. They operate on exactly the same principle. In fact, all of these kind of smoke machines run on the same principle. These are used mainly, a lot of photographers use these, cinematographers use these to get onto set, put a bit of smoke down, you know, but they're quite useful for model making as well. They've got this little cylinder. This little cylinder basically is a boiler. It heats up. In here we have oil filled up, the oil burns off, and then basically the smoke comes out, and it does produce a significant amount of smoke. And they both operate, in fact, they all operate in exactly the same way. Very similar to the vape technology, you know, a very similar sort of idea. This one, the Lensgo one, will operate on a remote, which is quite nice. However, the remotes for 99% of these smoke machines are infrared. And what that means is they need a line of sight. So if you're going to put this inside a model, that might be a little bit problematic, especially if the model's made of metal. And the other thing is, if you're going to use one of these outside in sunlight with an infrared remote control, forget it, because it ain't going to work. So, but they do produce great amounts of smoke. Now, this one, again, is exactly the same. I'll take the top off. You can see, look, the cylinder system on the top. Absolutely exactly the same system. This is just basically a bit that goes on there, because then you can add tubes and other bits and pieces coming off this. This one is the, I've forgotten what this one actually is called now. I can't remember. I'll remember. I'll put it in the description below. Basically, the Telesin is written on it. Perhaps I should read the instructions. I think it's the Telesin C40. I think this one is. This is my favourite, and I'll tell you the reason it's my favourite is because it. Did you notice the little remote that comes off? Look, and this remote is 2.4 gigahertz, meaning it will go serious distance and it will go through objects. So these can be built into models, and you've then got full remote control. It works in sunlight. Also, the remote is quite smart, and what I mean by that is that on the remote it automatically pairs. We can go and we can select different variations of different fog settings. We can also set timing settings on it. And again, what that means is we can go through, I'm doing it now. I'm going to set this to run for 5 seconds. Now, I'm not going to run this at the moment because it's going to fill the workshop with smoke. They are quite noisy. So, I mean, when I say noisy, you wouldn't use this on a silent film shoot, because I'm gonna use it here, so you'll hear it from my mic when I run this. But then saying that, if there's any ambient noise, anything going on, if it's in a model, you're not even going to notice it anyway. So there you have it. You have lots of different types of smoke systems: water-based, oil-based. I'm using one of these on the missile launcher that I'm doing for the Dita to create the kind of the smoke effect of the missiles launching. I use these for smoke screens on tanks because you can generate a really good thick layer of smoke. But yeah, I'll give you a quick demo, and I suppose I'll see you soon. I've disappeared. Now, what I did forget to mention is the oil. They all use the vegetable-based oil, glycerine, whatever. I can't read that. I haven't got my glasses on, so I couldn't read it anyway. But it's a kind of a vegetable-based oil. You can put any oils you want in these things. I've experimented with everything in these things, from baby oil in them, to the oils that come with them, to old bits of motor oil. You can really use whatever you want. I mean, obviously, bear in mind, if you're going to spend money on one of these, about 100 quid for these sort of things, that if you do put, you know, gungy oil in there, they're quite difficult to clean out, and then it might not work properly. But to be honest, I've never had a problem with one not working. So, but as I said, I just used vegetable oils. You can buy them online. You can either get the oils that the manufacturer recommends for the particular smoke machine, or you can just go online and just find basically big amounts of smoke machine, vegetable-based smoke machine oil. But whatever happens, it will trigger. That's super cool, that effect, isn't it? It will trigger the smoke alarms. So I will see you next time, and I will now disappear as if by magic.